Hey, it's Tim Fruits with Malibu Creative, navigating unprecedented times. Hey, life looks a little bit different for everybody right now, and during this time we thought we'd make a video series where we're just talking to people in our community, people who are adapting and people who are succeeding and even struggling a little bit, but finding ways to do what they do what they love to do. And this week we interviewed a pastor from Pathway Church right here in Wichita, Todd Carter. Todd and TJ talk about what it's like to do church when it's all about building community and you can't get people together. Talk about how we can how they're navigating that, how they're navigating the work from home culture. It's a really good, amazing interview. I think you'll really enjoy. So let's kick it off to TJ.
Well, hey, Todd. So thanks so much for doing this and being willing to jump in here with us and kind of chat with us. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, TJ, super glad to be able to be here today. And a little bit of my story is unique. First of all, I'm the lead pastor at Pathway Church. I've been there as lead pastor for about 14 years. I've actually been on staff, though, for 33 years total and grew up at Pathway. And so from that standpoint, my journey's been a little bit unique in the sense of I've literally almost held every role that you could have at the church. But my present role has been lead pastor. I've been doing that for about 14 years.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So tell us. So for those, I'm pretty familiar with Pathway, and I know, obviously we know each other. But tell me about Pathway. Like, tell me about the kind of the history of the church and what you guys do, and kind of what things look like, especially before we all had to kind of shelter in place.
Right. Well, in brief, our history is that we started in a little grade school on the west side of town called Peterson School back in 1959. Then we moved. We had one location over at 10th and Tyler Road for a number of years, for over 30 years. And then in 2003, we actually moved and built a new facility at 21st and Mays Road. And then since that time, we really began to explore kind of a new paradigm, a different way of really trying to accomplish our mission. And so then in 2012, we launched our Goddard campus. And then in 2017, we launched our Valley Center campus. And so we're a multi-site church, one church in multiple locations. And it's been a good journey.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So how is like this coronavirus, this COVID-19 kind of affected how you guys are meeting? Obviously, the governor just issued that they amended the stay-in-place order to include religious organizations, but I know you guys were already complying. So how does that change things for you?
Huge game changer from like every front. Certainly from just a week in and week out, of course we went to, we already had an online experience, but obviously kind of with all these changes, it's really forced us probably or created a circumstance where we really wanted to make our whole online experience a lot more robust. And so, especially in the first 2 weeks, for sure, I mean, we were really trying to figure out how to execute it, to be able to improve it, so that everybody at home could have the best kind of online experience they could. And so that was a big adjustment, even in terms of, used to be we just kind of set up a camera and just let everything kind of roll. But now it's a little bit, there's certainly almost all the elements now are pre-produced and so that we can be able to deliver the best kind of experience for people to be able to experience online church, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like even your team, because you guys are, I know meetings are a huge part of how you gather because you've got folks in multiple locations and trying to maintain that continuity across all three sites. Like how have you guys as a team adjusted to that?
Well, it's had a couple different iterations. I think initially when since churches are a part of essential services, initially we still, in terms of the staffing, we were still gathering at the church and meeting at the church to do meetings in terms of just the staff. But certainly here, actually this week, we've kind of been slowly moving to it, but this week we went full blown in terms of everybody went to working from home, and actually probably the last 2 weeks we were trying to kind of ramp up, make sure that everybody had the capacity to work at home. We had the infrastructure to work at home. For example, a lot of probably business and organization, nonprofits, churches, we went and made sure that everybody could function on top of like a Microsoft Teams platform so that we could all be connected and and be able to do, video meetings and everything else real simply and cleanly. And so it took us about a week and a half or more to kind of get all that, the infrastructure ready to go. But this past Monday, then we all went kind of working from home. There still are some things that obviously that we do at the church in terms of producing the service and things like that. But we've all kind of decentralized ourselves and all working from home now.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that it went through a couple different iterations. I think that for us has been part of this. It's like this time for experimentation, for trial and error, for kind of figuring out like, okay, so this is working for us, this isn't. And even, as a creative agency, we still had to get some tools in place that we just hadn't had to use before. That were all new for us. We had a webcam set up in the office to do group meetings in that context, but we never had to do that from individual homes. And so we had to go get mics and, gear to make sure we could shoot from multiple locations. So it's just taken those kind of pivoting and trying to figure out like, I said, what does this actually look like? So,
right.
I know a huge part of what you guys do is following Jesus in community for others. I mean, that's a huge part of how you guys operate. That in community piece, like how are you doing that now? Like how are you creating community or building community when you can't gather together?
That's a good question. I think it still is probably for everybody, it's still kind of a work in progress, but we had some things in motion and now we've tried to kind of up that. So first of all, one of the things that we've done is we've really, tried to mobilize and equip all of our existing small groups groups of people in the church that already currently gather together, maybe in homes and so on, and equip them and inspire them to continue meeting, but to do that through, like we're doing, TJ, through a Zoom call.
Okay.
So really trying to facilitate that. And then layered on top of that, how do we keep engaging people? Because obviously, maybe in an unprecedented way, one of the silver linings from a church perspective is that, now people have lots of time. The major way that they can connect with other people and culture is digitally. Yeah. And so people are kind of looking for some more, new content or help or hope or new types of connections. And so obviously, we've seen, obviously, our online viewership of our weekend services go way up. So now it creates an opportunity to try to get people connected at a deeper level. And so we've launched a lot of virtual small groups where our campus pastors are hosting a kind of a Facebook group where they look at the message from the previous weekend and try to look at it in a little bit deeper level. And so that's kind of created some new opportunities. So we're trying to take some stabs at not only facilitating our existing groups, what they were doing, but trying to, in essence, really try to leverage some opportunity that we have with new people as they're maybe getting connected digitally to the church for the very first time.
That's awesome. I think there's a lot of folks who are trying to figure out like, how to have those relationships, how to continue those pieces in an era in which, you're so used to having those conversations, informally or accidentally. A huge part of my life has been, intentionally bumping into people, like knowing that like, hey, if I go to this coffee shop at this time, I'm going to see Marty, like I'm going to get to visit with him. Like I know he's going to be there. And so, right. And now all of a sudden those pivots are different. And so it's been this change of like how to be like, I've had to really, as somebody who tends to be, in between that introvert extrovert line, I've had to be more intentional about making sure to find people, to connect with people, because it really is easy to kind of fold in on the crisis you're dealing with in your own household with kids, right, and all that. So that's awesome. I think it's going to be fun to see how that changes things. But I know part of what you guys do, part of like a normal rhythm of every church is weddings and funerals. And I know like, especially for weddings, we're coming into that season where those get really busy. How are you guys as a community of faith, like those big milestone events, how have those changed?
Well, the first, I would say, major experiment, at least that I was engaged in, was actually our former senior pastor that maybe some people in our community might be familiar with. His name was Gene Carlson. He was the pastor of Pathway for 42 years. He passed away just about a week ago, Saturday. And so what were we going to do in terms of his service? So actually this last Friday, we hosted our first, in essence, kind of virtual funeral. And so we did a live service that was, that we put on Facebook Live, and we did through our church online platform live, where we broadcasted that funeral service. And so then, you had to rethink a few of the elements in the service, but in many ways, there was a lot of it that was very much the same, but it was just trying to be sensitive to the fact there was a whole bunch of people online that were experiencing that. And so the interesting part about that is, in the end, you think about, even though Gene was a very high visibility community figure, a lot of times you'd say somebody like that maybe was going to have a service that was of, maybe of 700 to 1,000 people or something. That would have been a really big service. Well, from an online perspective, really our general observation was probably, we had people, number one, that were from all over the world. He had a lot of connections that were, that he had traveled a lot globally. And, we probably ended up having between, conservatively between 1,000 and 2,000 people viewing it online. So in the end, even though those things are difficult in some ways, or it's certainly different than what we've ever done before. We always have to try to look for some of the silver linings of some of the things of the change that we're going through now. And obviously everybody experiences a little bit of grief in the sense of change, not just in the sense of the loss of someone, but we all feel this grief of change right now. But there's also some silver linings that I think we can try to celebrate or enjoy or appreciate, that can, I think, give us some hope and some light in the middle of a difficult situation.
Absolutely. I got to view the service because I met Gene one time, and it was a real profound moment for me. But I know, like, there's a lot of people that I care about that I know Gene had a major impact, and you being one of them. Just, having grown up in that church and him being the pastor there for so long, like, I know his influence was far felt. And when I saw that he passed, I thought, oh, this couldn't be a worse time for this to happen. Like, the community needs to be able to mourn and to celebrate him well. And then when I got to watch the service, I was like, oh, they are like, we are mourning and celebrating well. Like, it's not what I expected. It's not what I was used to. And so, I definitely think it's that learning of, okay, what does this look like? And I love what Larry did during the service of, hey, jump in here with comments about, it's like a virtual guest book of, like,
yes.
And so that we can turn around and share those with the family. I thought that was such a neat way to allow folks to kind of participate in talking about somebody who was a major figure in a lot of people's lives.
Yep, definitely.
So that was awesome. That's it's that season of learning and leading. So having grown up in Pathway, and especially having gone through all these different iterations, like I know you even worked in the IT part of Pathway for a period of time.
Exactly.
So what is there something in your past, whether it's a failure or a crisis that you've gone through, or even just a season of change in your own life? Maybe it's a big win that you had that's prepared you to kind of lead through this, or helped you at least give you some that you're kind of going back to draw off of those experiences to kind of try to navigate this new situation?
I think that, it's interesting. When we do a podcast every week, and I was talking with Shane Ewing during that podcast, and he asked me a similar question, and it was weird, TJ, just answering this question in some ways almost created a visceral response in me, in the sense of, I don't know if I could point to one thing, but I certainly could say, I could point to like 5 or 6 mini crises that I think over, the last even 5 years of stress and of crisis that we've been through, of just differing kinds, that the big thing is that certainly God has been faithful in the past, through to be able to say it was really hard, it was difficult, but we made it. And on the other side, he did something good. And being able to know that, like I said, we're, from my kind of frame of reference, being a pastor, I think about like what it says in Psalm 139, where it talks about that God goes before us and he comes behind us. And that knowing that, like, even in the middle of our situation right now, even though that I think that just that sense of knowing that God has been faithful in my past, he's going to be faithful in my future. And even though I feel some uncertainty in these moments because I can't see the future. And nobody can see the future. because nobody in the history of the earth has ever experienced this. And so, but I know, because I've seen God be faithful so many times in my life, he's going to be faithful on the other side of this. And so I think that because of some of the pain, and I know, TJ, everybody has some of those things, especially maybe the Christ followers that are listening to this, that they've had bad experiences in their past, crises that they've been through in their business and their personally. God's been faithful. He's going to be faithful on the other side of this. You know, or another famous verse that maybe people who are Christ followers would be familiar with, as you know, that we know that in all things God works for the good for those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. We know that God's going to use bad things, not from God, I believe, that are from Satan ultimately, or from the evil one of this world, to be able to create something good on the other side. So that, I think that for me personally, that the crisis of my past in different ways has given me hope in the middle of this, because I've seen God be so faithful.
Yeah, I really appreciate that answer, because it is like there's nothing that is comparable. Like I was trying to explain to my kids, like, I know that school was closed a couple times when I was a kid, like once the school burned down. And so, my particular elementary school didn't meet for the rest of the year. Like we just got out early, and like once or twice there was flu that broke out in the area so much that they had to close school for a couple days. Yeah. Like that was it. Like I have no reference point for all of life grinding to a halt. And and trying to explain like what this feels like and what this looks like. Like I don't have anything for them, but I also know it's going to be okay. Like I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know what that means entirely, but I know up to this point in my life, things have always worked out because God has always been active in whatever is going to happen. And even if it's not been what I want or what I expect, it's always been good. And it's always been positive. So that's awesome. That's and especially as you guys as an organization, like this is a whole new reality. Are you seeing some stuff in the community in particular, like where you can look around and see different people trying different things that, especially just like even here in the greater Wichita area, that you would look at and be like, man, I am proud to be a part of a community with somebody who's doing something like that?
Well, when I think, I'm just in the broad brushes, I think, TJ, what I enjoy, or you can see some of the things maybe at a very micro level, as I've never seen so many people walking around in the neighborhood in all my life, and having great opportunities to be able to engage with people. And I think some of the thing that's been interesting, I think that the situation has created, is that we all know that we're in a common situation. I think people are friendlier than they've ever been, more open to giving help than they've ever been. And I think people are working to be creative. There's some of the little small things that I've seen that I think are having some great rippling effects. You've seen people try to take steps to be able to help people that are in the restaurant business, to be able to give grants to those people. Or I talked to a guy yesterday on the phone that is trying to kind of orchestrate a debt forgiveness for people who have medical debt because of some of the bills that probably they're going to incur as a result of some of the coronavirus, people that get sick as a result of that. And so you're seeing people like that, trying to help segments of the community begin to kind of rise up to be able to support them, knowing that, this is affecting all of us and all of us in different kinds of ways, but really trying to go after some of those groups of people in the segments of our community that are going to especially need help.
Absolutely. I was at the grocery store the other day. We've kind of pivoted to where I'm the only one that goes now for the family. And we, try to only go once every about 8 to 10 days, trying to time things out depending on how well I get my list together. But I was there the other day and I heard this guy thanking the person who was restocking the shelves. And in all of my 38 years, I'm not sure I've ever seen somebody thank somebody for stocking shelves. Like I just don't think I've ever seen that kind of like consciousness of other human beings in the world. It was just, it was awesome. Like it was one of those moments that I was like, I'm going to remember that. Like that's going to hang with me, because you just don't, I do think people tend to want to do what's good for others. Those handfuls of stories make the news of, somebody coughing at people at Walmart or whatever. But my experience is that little thing, or like one of my kids' teachers has already reached out and said like, hey, when's a good time to call? Like, I want to make sure and talk to him on the phone, at least once a week till the end of school, till the summer. And like,
that's
those
awesome.
are just like, that's an above and beyond thing. That's just awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm with you there. So do you think you're going to see, we've talked about it a little bit, but what changes do you hope to see, or do you think we'll end up seeing on the other side of this? Like, I do think whatever this is, it will change things long-term for us as a country. What do you think we're going to see?
Well, a couple things. Number one is, and you've already kind of said it in a way, everybody needs to get ready for a new normal.
Yeah.
Things are not going to go back to the way that they used to be. And I think one of them is in essence, the situation has forced everybody much more into a digital mode of communication. And I think on the other side of that, digital methodologies of communication are going to continue to rise. We already knew it, and this situation really forced everybody's hand to be able to kind of convert all our modus operandi of communication to that. I mean, I know on the other side of this, we're going to be having a lot more meetings that are going to be facilitated by video conference calls. That's going to be standard. And even in the church world, I think we're going to see people meeting less face-to-face together. Already that was a challenge for people. So for example, like in my small group, we meet in the old school, so to speak, we met every week together. I could see potentially in the new school that we will meet twice a month, and we'll meet virtually the other 2 weeks of the month.
Yeah. One
of the things that I'm seeing already is that in terms of mobilizing some of, in a church setting, which could be similar in a business setting, is that already I'm seeing volunteer teams where a campus pastor has a Facebook Live meeting for that particular group of volunteers, where he's sharing some information. People are asking questions during the Facebook Live session that he's answering. And then all the people that miss that meeting, they just go back and they can watch that meeting later on through the Facebook Live vehicle. And so to me, that's part of the signal. The other thing I think that's going to be a reality in every business and nonprofit, I think everybody knows financially everything's going to be different on the other side. We're coming to grips with that reality. We've some weeks already we've seen a 40% reduction in terms of what our income is. Some weeks haven't been that bad, but I'm telling you, on the other side, for every business and nonprofit, things are going to look financially different on that. So then I think it helps everybody zero in and say, what's really core essential about what we're doing. So I think what we're going to see is everybody get a little bit more laser focus on what the core of their business or their mission really is. That I think in a previous time, you could maybe be a little sloppier about it because sometimes having some resources can cover over sloppiness, but in the new reality, we're not going to have those extra resources to be sloppy. I think every business and nonprofit on the other side of this is going to have to get more laser focus. The other thing that I just because it's on the top of my head right now, I think just in terms of, because this digital communication thing is going to be so much a part of our new world reality, our new normal on the other side of this. I think I was working with our communication director we were looking at the schedule every day of all the different communications that we were sending out, email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook Live, and then you're going to have to think through all that. I think every business and nonprofit is going to have to really clearly look at their communication strategies and make sure just because you're doing lots of things doesn't mean that's all effective. Yeah. So I think we're going to be reviewing our communication strategy, especially right now, every 2 weeks, because in the last 2 weeks, we've changed. We've iterated. We've had to change our communication strategy because we've already learned some things are working, some things are not. We added a whole bunch of things. We probably need to subtract a few things off the menu, because people, in the end, if you got too many vehicles out there trying to communicate, it begins to be white noise and nobody hears anything. So I think we're going to have to be intentional on that side as a part of the new normal. So I think those will be three things that certainly in the new normal that are going to be significantly different.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And I love the idea of like having to revisit. I mean, that's, again, we're constantly like, all right, so we tried this, what does that look like? We've tried this, what does that look like? And
right.
Seeing like what works, what's effective. And I was talking with a friend who was back east, and he was sharing like, my boss wants me to submit what I do, but part of the challenge is like when I'm in the office, I have 30% more things that I have to do because there's meetings and stuff. And he said, now it doesn't look like I'm doing anything. And I was like, but what you've done is you've exposed like all there's 30% of your day that was non-essential to what you guys are doing as an organization. Like there's 30% of your day that was going to meetings. He works in the publishing industry. That's going to meetings about things that, are unnecessary, that you're no longer in, like you don't have to be in the room anymore. And I think the benefit of that long-term is going to be more meaningful work, more, a better output of a quality of product and a better work experience for people. I think ultimately, like we're going to see some of those shifts that'll be exciting. But it'll be interesting to watch it all unfold. I mean, up to this point, I would not have predicted that we'd be here. So I have no idea what it's going to look like. So absolutely. Well, so are there any questions that I should have asked or any questions that come up as we've walked through this that you're like, oh man, I'd love to share about that, or this is something that I think is important?
Not in the moment. I think we ended up, TJ, because we talked a little bit and make sure that we kind of hit everything along the way, but yes.
Awesome. So how can people keep up with you? Is there some places they can keep up with you personally or keep up with Pathway Church, or some things you want to highlight that you all are doing that they could go and check in on you guys with?
The easiest way to kind of follow what's going on in Pathway Churches, I think, is probably the Facebook page. That's the easiest thing to be able to follow. Pathway Church. You look that up on Facebook, Wichita. We have several different Facebook pages. I mean, in terms of each of our campuses have one, and then on our website, obviously, pathwaychurch.com. And the people can track what's going on there. But it's exciting. I think we're just in a new world, and I think the new world on the other side of this is there's some uncertainty, obviously, because nobody knows it. But I think be able to keep looking for all the silver linings, just like even you highlighted, TJ, about how that in the end that some of the use of virtual groups and everything else could end up helping people have more meaningful and productive work. Yeah. That's a silver lining on the other side of this. And it's changed, and that's a little stressful. I think all of us, to adjust to a new normal always is stressful. Yeah. But in the end, on the other side of it, then we'll think, oh, this was a good thing. I mean, even for me right now, I can say this selfishly, I preach on Saturday, and the whole rest of my weekend's free.
That's awesome. Absolutely. And you get to participate in the service fully, because you're not, having to stay focused on like, hey, I'm getting ready to go do this. Like, you're able to actually participate with your family, which is just awesome. So,
right. So some good things on the other side. And I think maybe a learning in that is because all of our attention is classically focused on all the things that are uncertain and that we're afraid of, but to be able to try to have a little bit of a shift of mindset to say, where are the silver linings here? And try to I even try to engage myself with other people that I know have a better tendency to look at those things than I do. And that helps me. It helps me get kind of refocused on some of those great opportunities and silver linings, even in the middle of this situation we're in.